All right, JoeyRitter.com, on Twitter at Joey Ritter. If you've watched the Philadelphia Flyers game over the last few years, you absolutely know my guest today. She serves as the Rinkside Analyst, producing great content pre, post, and in-game. She's at the forefront of a very long and successful career. Her name is Taryn Hatcher. Taryn, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Way to kill a little bit of time here during self-isolation.
For sure. Now, you recently tweeted your age, so I hope I'm not out of line bringing up that subject matter. You said you were 7 years old when the Flyers played in that year 2000 5-OT game. So applying some simple math, that would put you in high school at about the 2010 time frame. So let's wind the clock back to then and tell us about high school age Taryn Hatcher. What were your passions? What were you into? That kind of thing.
So I was playing a ton of soccer. That's actually, it's interesting because a lot of my friends have like tons of memories of like Eagle seasons and weekend stuff, whatever. And I was like in Connecticut to Florida to Louisiana to wherever for soccer. So that's why when people would ask like what my sort of foremost Philly sports were growing up, my brother played hockey. Flyers played a ton of game on weeknights. Like I could always make it work with when Flyers games were on. So it was, it was a lot of soccer. It was probably me being a little bit of a knucklehead in high school back then. Really got it together later in high school and into college. And I was just probably your typical, Delrane's such a small town too. It's like, I feel like we all did the same things that the kids the year before us did. Like homecoming was a crazy big deal. And, I remember when the Phillies won the World Series and there was the parade, like we couldn't go because there was a soccer game that day, or we had a practice that day and a soccer game the next day. And if you missed school the day before a game, you couldn't play in a game unless you had a medical note or whatever. So yeah, I was heavy on playing sports back then. And then when it came to watching, if I was watching something, it was probably the Flyers actually.
You got to make an exception for the Phillies parade. I don't know who was calling the shots back then, but
Papa Hatch does not play around. If you're supposed to go to school, you go to school.
I remember
that
parade was on Halloween on a Friday, I think, of 2008. So you get through high school, you graduate Rutgers with honors, and then you land at Hawaii News Now. Now, Taryn, I got to imagine if you've got to pay your dues in a market, that's got to be the greatest situation possible. Am I right about that?
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. It was really unexpected. So I graduated a semester early, and I kind of didn't have plans. Like I was sideline reporting, freelancing, and I was actually working for Big Ten Network and making fairly decent money for a college kid doing that. And my dad was like, you can't waitress at Chickies and Pete's and sideline freelance and live in our house. Like you have to find a full-time job. And so literally in the middle of studying for a final, I just applied to this job in Hawaii. Had never been there, didn't know anyone there. But yeah, if you're going to really like abruptly change your life and move far away and not know anybody, that's the place to do it. It's beautiful. The food's amazing. The people are amazing. But like more than anything, it's such a like welcoming, we'll take care of you culture. And so I was so homesick for like 6 months because all my friends were finishing out their senior year and I was done. And I was brutally homesick. And people just kind of took me in and took care of me, made sure I was okay. But yeah, it was bizarre. Like my friends would be 6 hours behind or ahead of me, excuse me.
Right.
So like I would get text messages at like 2 a.m. and my parents would call me at like 3 a.m. And like, it was just such a bizarro world. But yeah, it was sick. It was really cool. And people always kind of ask me like, well, what sports are out there? There's no pro sports out there. But it was a great place to cover sports too. I mean, between the golf that would come out there and all of Tua Tagovailoa, who we now know from Alabama will be on the Dolphins. I covered him like his sophomore, junior year of high school when he was blowing up. So it was really cool. It was a really fun time. I highly suggest anyone between the ages of 22 and 25 take 3 years, move to Hawaii, just do it for the experience. And I think it helped make me a much nicer, more aloha filled
Oh,
person.
that's good.
And that's all already worn off. But for a while,
Well,
really
not
softened it up
behind
a little
you,
bit.
but that's yeah. So I've never been to Hawaii. I imagine I'll get there someday. Can you give any travel tips, recommendations, things that you absolutely have to see that might not be obvious?
Ooh. I would say like ask a local to suggest like a local thing to do, but that like a local food place. Like I lived on Oahu the whole time, so I have lots of Oahu tips. Go to get poke from like Foodland, which is literally just a grocery store, and they have these big poke trays. Go get a poke bowl in Hawaii. The poke bowl here is not legit. It stinks. Uh, Go get, I don't eat meat, but my dad always talks about how good the pork was in Hawaii. Like a lot of Polynesian culture includes great pork dishes. Go get some pork. Uh, Go get
What about
garlic shrimp on the North Shore.
what about if you're trying to take
Sorry, what was that?
a picture or something with a great background or a waterfall
Ooh.
or something?
I mean, go to the North Shore of Oahu. Everyone, I always tell people, just go and go for sunset. I mean, there's literally a beach called Sunset Beach because it's the most insanely beautiful beach at night. But the North Shore of Oahu just gets like cotton candy skies at night when the sun sets, and in the winter they get crazy swells. So I would always tell my friends would come visit in like January, and we would just go to the beach at like 7 a.m. and maybe bring some mimosas and some food, and we would just sit, and like Kelly Slater would be surfing in front of us, and John Florence would be surfing in front of us, and Jordy Smith, and we would sit out there for hours and just watch surf. And it's beautiful, like 5-foot turtles out there. It's sick. It's amazing. It's the most amazing. You get why it's almost like it's so isolated because it was like created and too perfect, and they wanted to protect it from like the outside world ruining it. It's beautiful. Hawaii is amazing.
Awesome. So you spend a few years there, you get back to Philadelphia, your hometown, covering your hometown team. Was that always the goal, or did it just kind of fall into place timing wise?
Yeah, Philly was always like the pipe dream. And I mean, realistically speaking, I was always pretty honest with myself. I wanted to do this since I was little. I had watched a lot of people's careers. And when I interned all over the place. I talked to lots of people about their careers. I interned at Comcast Sportsnet before it was NBC Sports Philadelphia. And I thought like maybe one day I'll end up in Philly, when I'm in my 30s and I have a couple kids and I wanted to be near my family. I never thought I was 25 when I got hired back to Philly. And it was truthfully it was great timing. And it was just like such a shock because specifically Comcast Sportsnet and now NBC Sports Philadelphia was like end goal to me.
Right.
Because I just think, say what you will about New York and LA in terms of media markets, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Boston are the 3 best sports markets in the United States of America. Like it's just bar none. You talk to anybody who's played sports professionally, who have played all over the country, and they'll tell you that. So I always wanted to be back in Philly because I don't know if I could, especially after the Super Bowl, I don't know if Boston was ever realistically a place where I could land. My family's here and I wanted to be close to home again. And I feel like it's different when you talk about a team you grew up rooting for. You just have like a different connection to them and the history. And, I got to do something on the Bruins Flyers 2010 series, and I got to interview Danny Briere, and it was such a like pinch me moment of how did I get here? Because I can remember watching it in high school and just being, gobsmacked at the hockey. And now I'm talking to the people playing it that played it. So it's cool.
Awesome. So now you have such a strong vocal presence. Before the cameras turn on, the mic turns on, is it like a singer warming up? Do you do like do, re, mi, fa, sol, las, or you just kind of get the reps in and do it?
Yeah, no, I talk to myself a lot. So I have my notebook around. I don't know where I put it, but my notebook would make no sense, I think, to anybody but me. People think like I have scripts and people hand me scripts, and that's just never how it works. 0% of the time is how it works. My producer actually comes to me and is like, what do you have? Or if there's something specific the Flyers want in there, we try to really shed some light on the charity and the good work that the team does, because the Flyers specifically do a ton of charity year round. So we always talk to them about how they want that done. But yeah, I literally have notes, and it's kind of bulleted because it happened one time this year where I talked over a goal, but that's the only time it's ever happened. Is with hockey, the breaks are so short, and it's not like basketball where if you talk over a basket, it's not a big deal. Hockey's not high scoring.
Right.
And it's also not like football where there's long breaks in between play. If they come back and the ref decides to drop the puck 10 seconds after we come back, I'm usually through, hello, welcome back to the Wells Fargo Center. I'm Taryn Hatcher, and that's 5 seconds, and I have 5 seconds to say what I need to say.
Right.
So basically I just talk to myself, because if I can think of it in kind of chunks, I know where I can kind of slide a piece out and get out of the hit. Sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes I sound like I'm mumbling and having a stroke on air, and I acknowledge that too. So, but it's truthfully different for everybody though. So it's interesting. I like seeing how other reporters do it. Some people literally write out a script and they memorize it. That has never worked for me. I don't think it ever will. But you'll see me, the one camera guy makes fun of me because you can always tell when I'm about to do a hit, because the producer will get my ear and say, after the next break, we're coming to you. And then I'll start talking to myself, sort of trying to map out exactly how I want to say it. But you can't, even with hockey, you can't really write everything before a game, because like, let's say we're talking about the Flyers power play struggling, and then by time there's a stoppage and they can get to me, the power plays score 2 goals. You have to change everything. So, but yeah, I do talk to myself. I don't do like the red leather, yellow leather, or unique New York. So like, but I also, there are Twitter haters that say I stumble over my words, so maybe I should start, but I don't do any of that. Yeah.
So is it up to you or a producer, I guess, who you pull aside after the second period and interview?
It's a bit of a conversation. I will always let my producer decide if he has a strong feeling on something. My producer, Brian Cooper, actually all the people in my truck, Brian Cooper, Mike, and Beth, like, they're all phenomenal at their jobs, and they've been doing it as long as I've been alive. So I will always defer to them. But Coop really will always talk to me and say, who do you want to get? Let's say there's 3 goals in the first period somehow. Who do you want to get? And like, if we prepped something on JVR having a hot streak and JVR scored in the first period, I'll say, let's do JVR. But it's a team effort, because they have to build the graphics for it within a couple minutes before break. And but they always try to let me know. But the Flyers do this to me all the time, which is fine, where someone scores with like 38 seconds before the break, and then that's every time who we're going to get. So it's fun. But I used to, last year, I think my first year, and it shows, I was very nervous about those interviews, because again, I don't think hockey's quite like basketball or football. It's a low scoring game. It's just a different situation. You can't talk about injuries. It's just a much different game. Yeah. And so they used to give me like agita, like I got anxiety about, how do I interview for hockey? And then this year it was just like, I'm just going to talk to these guys about the game. And this year it's become a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, it never seemed like you were nervous. It always seemed natural. I always get bummed out thinking that if the Flyers make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and not to take anything from Doc Emmerich, because he's the greatest, but, you don't have a JJ or a Taryn there calling, the finals. Now, the NCAA a number of years ago, when Villanova was in the finals, they did one stream that was Villanova biased, and then another stream that whoever team they were playing, they had their feed. Is that something that could happen in the future, you think? Or
I don't know for rights' sake right now that that's something that would happen. I would love to do that, but I know NBC Sports Network National has certain rights. Who knows as far as the future can go, especially with betting now getting involved. And Gary Bettman, the NHL commissioner, has been very progressive in terms of, this isn't going anywhere, so we're going to adopt it, and we're going to do it in a way that we find works for us rather than fighting it. I think you could eventually see team-specific feeds or bet-specific feeds. I think that's especially likely. But I would love to. The nice thing is though, is Bush is now, he's not, I mean, I would never say that I'm Bush's equivalent, but Bush is the between the benches Rinkside guy.
Yeah.
And Bush will always do a great job for the Flyers. I mean, Bush does a great job with everybody, but Bush will always do a great job for the Flyers and just is the nicest guy in the world. And we could see Jonesy, probably will see Jonesy in some capacity, either, you know, pregame, postgame, or whatever. So Flyers have good representation on the national level right now too.
Even Emmerich, he called the games in the 80s. So you can always tell. He always throws these odd Flyers facts in there that, you know, and somebody who wasn't covering the team wouldn't necessarily know. He's got a soft spot for the Flyers.
He's just superhuman too. I mean, his voice is like the sound of hockey to me. JJ's voice is the sound of the Flyers to me. And it always, I mean, I know I didn't grow up with Gene Hart, so it's different. I get there's that crowd too. And I obviously have a massive amount of respect for that crowd, especially the Stanley Cup call. But JJ is synonymous with Flyers to me, and Doc is synonymous with NHL hockey to me. So, Doc is unbelievable. JJ's unbelievable. And Bill Clement, I would love for Bill Clement to be on a call for one of those games, because Bill Clement has factoids like that he pulls out of his brain that are and these nuggets of stories that are unbelievable.
He did this show a while ago, 5 or so years ago, but he was awesome. It was like middle of August afternoon, and he just kind of chilled out and told all these great stories. He was perfect. Yeah. Loved talking to him.
Yeah, the man's an encyclopedia.
In the post-game media scrum, you know, I love watching the post-game shows and the interviews with the players. Like, how is it determined whose turn it is to ask the questions? Is there any etiquette there? What can you tell me about that?
Well, if I get irritated, I kind of will just go. And I think it's the loudest voice generally gets it. Sam Carchidi, I think, is always up to, like, ask the question that you don't really want to ask. And Sam has no issue with doing it. That I truthfully think. I've encountered that. So if it's like a bad loss, I will kind of always defer to Sam and let him ask the questions that I don't want to ask. And Sam doesn't really sugarcoat it. So, you know, if you get a bad loss, Sam Carchidi and a Jake Voracek, you're going to get like a big reaction answer. And I'm not trying to instigate that myself. But it's generally, I think, like Sam's always in there. Charlie always has good questions. So if you, like, for me, I know if I hear somebody else trying to talk at the same time who always asks great questions when I want to ask a question, I'll defer to them if my question is not groundbreaking. But it's kind of just who jumps in there first. I tend to try to stand in the front, because the one time I didn't stand from the front, I became a GIF along with my coworker. That
I wasn't going to bring it up, but yes, I remember that very.
So I try to stand towards the front where like the cameras are right next to me. And normally when you're in front, I think you get to ask questions first. But there's kind of a group of us, Sam, myself, Charlie, Dave Isaac always asks great questions. And so we were kind of always just getting in there. I try to, as a person who travels on the team plane and is in the team hotels and everything else, I try to stay out of the mud when it comes to certain issues. But the guys are great about bad games too. So this team, especially this year, it's really easy to interview this squad. Mm-hmm. But there's no real order, I would say. It's usually just Sam does go first.
Sam goes first. So speaking of scrums, I know you can't divulge exact quotes maybe, but I would love to hear maybe like a memorable on-ice altercation that you were kind of center stage that us fans weren't privy to.
That's tough because I don't hear a lot. I see the same thing kind of happen all the time. So there's a couple interesting things that happen. I constantly see G will do this thing where he has his stick in both hands, like near his knees, and he's just kind of cruising. He's not really skating. And when he does that, he'll always kind of swing by a guy on the other team and make some kind of comment with a little smile. And then you'll see the guy laugh, which means G is like chirping somebody. And Scott Lawton at home games at the beginning before the third period starts, I think it's in the third period or when the third period starts, we'll always skate up to the ice crew and tell them how the ice is that night, which is interesting. Because he'll come over and he'll be like, yeah, especially if it's warm outside, the ice gets crappy. Everybody knows this. He'll sit there and he'll come up and you'll hear some 4-letter words every once in a while. Other than that, I'm trying to think. It's mainly when guys are pressed up against the boards and the puck is like stuck down in somebody's shoe and they kind of won't let it out. You'll hear, I remember Jake Voracek one time saying like, don't be a blank, get the blank out of the way. You little blank, get the blank off the puck, stuff like that. But I actually don't hear too much. The crowd has been so loud this year, especially in the Wells Fargo Center, that it's hard to hear anything.
Sure. All right. Well, we're gonna shift a little bit, get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
Do you have a go-to karaoke song? Do you ever do karaoke?
I don't sing ever unless I am very overhydrated. I'm trying to think. I feel like one time I did this. I don't do them, but the one time that I did that it was a hit, I did "You're Still the One" by Shania Twain with one of my best friends out in Hawaii. And she was a little overserved too. So it was a good kind of just screaming the lyrics back and forth. But no, I can't. There are hyenas with better voices than me.
Okay. What is your least favorite household chore?
Least favorite household chore? This is female specific, and if you live with a girl, anyone who listens that lives with a girl, you know that hair is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I shed like a border collie. And so it's like vacuuming, like it's cleaning up hair. And it's my boyfriend's least favorite thing too. So I try to keep it clean, but it's just gross. I just hate, if I could shave it off, I would shave it off.
Yeah.
But
I live with 2 girls and cleaning the shower drain. Not a good time. So
yeah, it's gross. It's like you have a gerbil in it.
What is your favorite Tom Hanks movie?
Ooh, my roommate loves Happy Forrest Gump. Confusing classics. My roommate loves Forrest Gump, but I feel like I'm more of like a Saving Private Ryan kind of girl. I love historical stuff. I feel like it's wrong to say you love like war movies, but like Band of Brothers, all that kind of stuff. I do enjoy like historical stuff. So I love Saving Private Ryan.
I love hearing people's answer to that question because it's just so many decades of movies.
What's the most common one? Oh, Toy Story's up there too. Childhood favorite.
Saving Private Ryan said a lot. Forrest Gump for sure. Big is said a lot. Yeah. I always not a fan.
I wouldn't even put that in like top 4.
Come on. What? I mean, not a comedic Tom Hanks fan? Just the drama?
I like, what was the one that he was in with Meg Ryan? That was him, right?
Sleepless in Seattle.
Yeah.
And I
would throw that up there. Like Toy Story, Castaway, Saving Private Ryan. I think those would be top 3 for me. Trying to think. Yeah, Big would not be. But that's like that. I'm not going to say something that people are going to find controversial. It's just not in the top 3.
Well, so you like dramatic Tom Hanks, and I'm cool with that. But as far as a comedian or an actor, who makes you laugh?
Oh man, Brian Callen is hilarious, and he does not get enough credit. I saw Brian Callen in Philly last spring, and he's this hilarious stand-up comedian. But he's in so many movies in these sneaky tiny roles, and he plays like every type of character on the spectrum. And he's hilarious. I love Brian Callen. I recently, and this is like such a bizarre random, I recently rewatched all the Austin Powers, and it's such kind of like simple, over the top humor, and I found it hilarious. Bill Hader too. Bill Hader's a real smart,
Oh yeah.
funny kind of, yeah, he's a very smart kind of funny.
I wasn't in on the ground floor of Bill Hader. I remember when it was on Saturday Night Live, I didn't get it, but then as his career evolved, I was
I
the one.
love Bill Hader.
Yeah.
Barry's a great show too. I stopped watching it a while ago just because I like was in between seasons. But Barry is a great show.
Yeah.
He's a really good actor too.
Yeah. And this is my most asked question. If you had to time travel one way, would you visit the past or the future? And what year?
Can I come back at some point?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to
Okay,
leave.
because if I can't come back, I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
Past or future? See, not to be like political, but there's not a ton of great times in the past for like women in general. So you can only go so far back. And I don't know that, like, if I was going to go back, I would go back like far. So probably future. I think it'd be scary to know the future and come to the present too. I don't know. I'm a pretty like content person. Maybe back, but back really far. And
Like
knowing that I could come back.
or-
No, I think like, I don't even know, like maybe Greek Roman stuff or like Renaissance. So like either like the birth of democracy kind of era or like the Renaissance, but not like I'd want to be there for like 4 days and then I would come back. Or you know what? I would travel to directly after this pandemic is over. That might be my answer.
I had another guest that said the same thing, and that's
yeah.
It looks like you'll be getting back to work soon. So we're gonna wrap this up and let you go. But what are you most excited about over the next few years, kind of as like social media and the actual NBC media converge? How do you see your role evolving? Kind of future ambitions with the team.
I love that NBC's always promised me this, is they've let me get a little bit more in the producer side of things. Because when I was in Hawaii, I was my own sports director, which is nice because you're able to take, we're in an age where certain things work on Facebook and certain things work on Twitter and certain things work on Instagram. But when it comes to especially this hockey team that we have now, they're a great group of guys and they're a very entertaining group of guys. And I think that they've done a great job with their social media. Everyone over there, John, their photog, Andrea, their in-arena host, like everyone over there has done such a good job showcasing that in a way that the team is comfortable with and in a way that the fans love. And I love that NBC is also getting in on doing that in a really polished, fun way, because I think people like that. Like people like to know that the people they look up to are like them. So I enjoy that they've allowed me to kind of create that in more and have helped me find a way to bring that to people, which has been awesome. And then other than that, it's just this hockey team's really good. It's like they're a really good team. They're really fun to cover. And when I tell you, I mean, everybody talks about what good guys hockey players are, but like this team specifically, you even have a guy like Kevin Hayes who's got this great big personality. And I can tell you, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I will, like, even he at times shies away from doing tons of media because he doesn't want to overshadow, like he doesn't want to come in and be this blockbuster guy and make everybody uncomfortable and make them feel like they need to do that much media or he's being showy. They're just a very considerate, fun, exciting group. And I think just covering them is honestly such a treat for me because, I mean, they're respectful, they're easy to get along with, and they win a lot of hockey games, and they're playing a really great brand of hockey. Right. So that's all I can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken, my kids to the carnival, and selfishly, like, I enjoy meeting the players too, but I kind of, and they've always been so cool to, like, my daughter, and you could just see it's not fake, it's genuine, So,
yeah, they're great people.
All right, Taryn. Well, people can find you online on Twitter at Taryn NBCS and on Instagram at Taryn Hatcher. Taryn, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was very fun.